Canadians' bank accounts are being drained, and we're going to go through the data that actually comes from the Bank of Canada themselves. And we're also going to talk about potentially a black swan event that is on the horizon actually for 2024, which was picked up by the Globe and Mail. So let's get into that first. So forget rate relief. Canadians are about to see their mortgage interest payments soar. So this goes into something that I think is incredibly interesting and could obviously have huge impacts. In Canada's mortgage market, sentiment can shift on a dime. Yes, it can. Why is that? Because it's highly speculative. That's why. So that's especially evident these days as the Bank of Canada prepares to start cutting rates. They're already just assuming that this is going to happen again. Until they stop assuming this, I really think it's unlikely at this point. As a result, the mortgage rate discussion is dominated by anticipated rate relief, which could come as early as this summer. But the shock still lies ahead, and while rate cuts may ease the blow, a higher rate reality awaits most of today's current fixed rate mortgage holders. And this is the key data here. So this comes down to timing. While mortgage rates are expected to start lowering within the next few months, the vast majority of existing mortgage borrowers, roughly 70%, have fixed rate that remain at the record low prices available during the pandemic. For example, the lowest discounted 5-year fixed rate mortgage rate was 1.39% compared to 4.79% today. So a lot lower. Obviously, it's gone up like 400% over that time. So they basically talk about when this could exactly happen. But you know, it's really interesting, isn't it? When you think about cutting rates and they're talking about cutting rates, they almost talk about cutting interest rates like the Bank of Canada controls it. And I want to tell you something, guys. You'll know, people who have followed this channel, that it is not the Bank of Canada that controls interest rates, especially the 5-year fixed rate mortgage, because it's based off the bond yields plus a risk premium. So obviously the risk premium can fluctuate depending on what's going on, but the bond yield itself is based on where they think inflation is going to be, inflation expectations, and where they think rates are going to be because of that. So obviously if bonds start to sense that inflation is going to be going higher for whatever reason, and I'm not saying it is, then you could see fixed rates that head higher. Now, an example of this was in 2021 when I started this channel. I was talking about this, how bond yields were rising, nobody was paying attention, and most of the comments I would get opposing this view would say, Luke, you're completely insane. The Bank of Canada is not saying that. They're not going to do it. They're not going to be raising rates. But the bond yields are right 99.9% of the time. And that's because they're baking in that future inflation expectation. So I just want to outline that, because for 5-year fixed rates especially, it's not dependent so much on the Bank of Canada as you would be led to believe by the mainstream media, which is basically saying when they come in and cut rates, that'll have an immediate impact, which it will on the front end of the curve, the variable rate, but not so much the fixed rates. And I think people have been burnt enough by the variable rates. But anyway, consider that there is approximately 2 trillion, yes, 2 trillion, that's not a typo, in outstanding mortgage debt. Only 5% of that came up for renewal in 2023. According to Canada Mortgage and Housing Corp, CMHC, with 13% slated for this year, that spikes to 23% in 2025 and a whopping 31% in 2026 and 21% in 2027. So that is really interesting to me, because I do believe that at some point interest rates are going to come down. I think it's going to be short-lived though, maybe only a couple of years, if that, because as I've said, the government is stupid and most of the public, unfortunately, is uneducated. So they're just going to demand that the government does something, no matter who's in, Pierre or Justin Trudeau. They're going to demand that they do something. Give me that money. They're going to be pounding their hand on the table saying, give me that money. I need those stimulus checks. Whatever stimulus checks you can give me, whether that's mortgage relief, they just defer debt payments again. Who knows what that is, but it's unprecedented stimulus. Then the government has to essentially set aside all that money to obviously cover and then stimulate the banking system and the economy. I think because now the government is such a large entity, it interferes so much with the economy, and because it doesn't produce anything, that can send inflation skyrocketing. And that's essentially what we saw happen. It was a joint thing that happened with all the central banks, and I think it will be a similar thing this time. Timing might be off per central bank a little bit, like Canada might be before the Federal Reserve. We'll see. Anyway, it's incredibly interesting. So just think, next year it's going up over 10% to 23% is renewing in 2025. So that is really a lot. So now I want to talk about checkable deposits, because this is really interesting as well. So the chart above my head, basically what's going on there, this is personal checkable deposits, which are in Canadian bank accounts. So this chart, if we go to just at the start, for instance, of 2020 here, so January 1st, 2020, you're talking about around about a 28% increase in checkable deposits since then, after it's come down. So you would think, wow, Luke, people have a lot more money. So surely that is why the economy is still ticking over, even though it's not really. It's just actually getting worse and worse and worse. And we're even seeing that with the incoming data now. But when you really think about it, guys, and this is what I want you to think about, where has inflation been for you over the past 4 or 5 years? Has it been 28%? Because for me, I think it's been around 60, possibly even 70%. For some things, they've gone up 100% plus. So, there has been massive changes in prices. And I think the price change for most people over the past 4 years has been way higher than 28%. So what does that mean then? That means that it doesn't matter when you look at this chart and you say, oh, it's higher than 2020, because in real terms, these people are poorer than they were in 2020 because of their purchasing power. Again, we've been over this many times. Currency is just an accounting system. It's what you can buy with the currency that makes a difference. If you're just rich in currency, it doesn't mean anything. I mean, right now, at least you can get a return on having different currencies, 5%, over 5% in the United States, 5% in Canada. And that is why you see those adjustments in different currencies to obviously adjust for the differential in rates, because people can get different rates of return for holding different currencies. But when you actually think about it, it's what you can buy with the money. That is what is very, very key. And that's what people forget. So yeah, you can say savings, Luke, they're much higher than they were before the pandemic. And I would agree with you. That is true. But those people are much poorer than they were before because of inflation. And, for some people with mortgages, variable rate mortgages especially, that has absolutely skyrocketed. I mean, just the interest payments alone have sent their inflation up more than 100%. So it's kind of crazy when you actually think about what's happening here. And it really comes back to just people getting poorer. And the fact that we're in this silent depression, the fact that nobody's going to admit it, nobody's going to say it. And I'm the only one who's out here saying that we're in a depression. The mainstream media, they're waiting for somebody to tell you you're in a recession. If you're waiting for the government to tell you, unfortunately, you're a lost cause. So anyway, 2022 was when you saw the peak in the chart of real residential property prices in Canada, and it continues to head lower. And again, you've got to adjust this for inflation. I mean, this is using the CPI, which is not accurate at all, but you can use it as a base level. And, I could easily make a case for that prices in certain areas are well below what they were pre-pandemic when you think about the inflation that we've seen. So I think that's worth bearing that in mind. You've also got the Toronto vacancy rate that's soaring 30% higher. It's interesting, prices haven't moved that much. So this is new purpose rentals vacancy rate. You can see how it spiked during the pandemic. It's currently at 2.6%. So, I mean, this is slightly good news, I guess, because renters are going to see a little bit of relief. I mean, I have friends in Toronto and they've said to me that they're definitely seeing more inventory on the rental market, and rental prices have come down, especially at the high end. And you are seeing average condo rents that are coming down. And you've just got to think about that, because costs for for the people that own them are still at historic highs. So they're not seeing any relief. So things are just getting worse when it comes to the housing market. And it's no wonder that you've got condo sales that are at 15-year lows. When does that take you back to? Oh yeah, 2009. Was that a good time? I don't think so. And then another thing that I just want to quickly go over is what's happening with Teal Group. So you may not have even heard about this, and thank you. I think it was Charlotte that sent it to me, but thank you for seeing this. I don't see every story, and thank you for sending them. So the Surrey headquartered Teal Jones Group, the multi-generational BC forestry firm with 3 mills and some 400 employees in the Lower Mainland, filed for court protection from its creditors Wednesday. Its dwindling revenues left it without the cash to pay its bills. So essentially, lumber company going bankrupt, obviously probably been massively affected by the whipsaws that we've seen in lumber prices. I mean, lumber prices, do you remember when they just absolutely skyrocketed like they did in 2021? You went up to a double top. I mean, this is exactly like a bubble chart. You know, you see that double top. This one's with a lower high, but sometimes you even see them with higher highs. And now you can see it's come all the way back down to 459, which is around about historic. If you look at it, it was nearly there during February 2020, and it was higher than that during 2018. So, you know, they've been affected by that, but you've also got to think about what's happening with the housing market, because what does it really say if a lumber company is going bankrupt? It doesn't say good things about the economy, does it? And another thing that doesn't say good things about the economy is Restaurants Canada, who put out this, that restaurant bankruptcies are skyrocketing. And that is no understatement. They have practically doubled in the last year. So restaurants going bankrupt has skyrocketed. This is really interesting because this is something I noticed especially at the start of this year. I was seeing announcements everywhere that restaurants are closing down. I was seeing it in the news, and now you're seeing the data back that up, that restaurant bankruptcies are up over 100%. So there's going to be less places that you can go eat apart from the main chains, obviously, that will continue to probably function. So anyway, I want to thank you so much for watching this video. Please check out this video on my other channel and subscribe there. I'm going to be producing more interviews on that channel. Need to get up to 1,000 subscribers so I can live stream there. And if you're looking for a VPN, you know where to go. Go to expressvpn.com/marketmania. I will see you